Hi, everybody. Well, I know. Hello, everyone. Wait, I have to exclude myself from the doohickey. Wait a second. That's in outputs. I have to exclude. How do I? There we go. That's better. Hello, welcome to the test kitchen. Good to see all of you. We have a few guests here today. So excited to have them with us. I see Ray Harwood is coming in. We usually make our rounds. That's how we kind of usually start our kitchen, say hello to everyone. So we'll make our rounds and then I'll introduce our special guests. But for right now, let me get out of this and let's just say hello to everyone. So who's first on my list? Wait a second, let's see. Andy, I'm skipping you. Mike! How you doing, Mike?
Good. As you make me laugh when you say you're skipping Andy on purpose.
I'm skipping Andy. Andy has been everywhere for eCam the past 2 weeks. We are so blessed and lucky. What a gift. Good to see you, Mike.
Yeah, and we've seen Frank. Doc around too. Doc's been doing the gamut too.
Doc's been made. Yeah, but Doc gets paid to do all that, or at least I don't know if he gets paid, but he's supposed to do that. Let's first say hi to Frank. Hello, Frank.
Good day. Did you say you're paying all of us to be here? That's very kind of you.
I am paying all of that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Paying all of you in A&W root beer. A&W root beer.
I'll take it.
For a distinguished, I'm not getting paid by them, so. Mr. Drinkwater, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm frozen is what I am because you just froze for me.
I'm practicing those. Do you know they're very good in meetings when you want to get the attention of everybody?
Now you're just being mean. Hasmuk, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Tamra, yay.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am good.
Good. And Ray Harwood, was I included in an email with you today?
You were. I had the very same existential experience.
Oh, no.
Dave
Someone
sent
a Zoom question to Ray Harwood and me. What were they thinking? My response was, hey, that sounds cool. Ray actually sent them to a support link. So it's good to see you, Ray.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be in the kitchen.
And Andy Carluccio, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's good to be back and see everybody, and hope everyone's having a good start to the summer. If you work in the school systems, maybe you're getting towards the end of the year, so it's good. It's great to see everybody.
You know what's so funny is that I guess in California, is it the same? Did the schools just get out, or are they still just getting out?
I think they're ending around now. Yeah.
It's so funny because that's the way it is up in the Northeast also. That's what I've always been used to. Down here in Florida, we're already into our second week of camp. Yeah, they end like the first week of June or mid-May. It's crazy. It's wild. Lovely to have you here. Doc Rock.
What is happening?
Need I say anything else? It's so good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. How's everybody doing?
You know what? We are all doing okay. I am in this meeting with eCam for Zoom. We're here to celebrate a little bit of Ecamm for Zoom today. I also have those beautiful tiles loaded up and running. And putting these two together, I think, could be really, really powerful. So excited to play around. Let me start with you, Doc. We're gonna pick on you and Andy a little bit, and if it's okay, I'd like to encourage us to get beneath the oh, how nice this is. I mean, it is nice. It's lovely. I'd like to dive a little deeper with you guys about the use cases, about why this functionality is so critical to so many people. So let's start with use cases. Can maybe Doc and then Andy, or just chime in whenever. Can you talk a little bit about why Ecamm for Zoom and Ecamm for MimoLive and Ecamm for why Ecamm writ large for all these different tools is so important?
That's a good question. I came from doing this the hard way. Okay. So I think it's interesting because to a lot of people, doing sort of a virtual or remote level of meeting or production, whatever, is relatively new, and everybody talks about it from the sort of pandemic situation. I live in Honolulu, Hawaii. So we've been doing remote stuff like this for decades because it's cheaper than plane tickets. Now I'm gonna say it's not. Looking at my studio now, it's the other way around. I should have just got on a plane and gone to San Francisco. I can see Andy a lot cheaper than setting this up. But it used to be that, going and getting a Zephyr line and putting up a camera and a box that could encode this information and send it across the stream with Blackmagic Intensity with Wirecast, and then another machine that was running Adobe Media Encoder or some sort of ingest machine, and would basically convert the stuff, send it over NTTP, get on the other end, they would decode it and play it, and it was glorious. But when we did that, we were in budgets that rival some school district entire budgets. Zoom came along, and it's funny, I was using Zoom before there was such a thing as this Panini situation, but we were mix and matching. Like, we were using everything from Zoom to Blue Jeans to WebEx to whatever the client had. We would just, jump on board and do that. But we were normally using Wirecast to basically build the picture that would get ingested into that machine using CamTwist and letting CamTwist show up so that you can be cool. And again, the amount of hoops and loops and wires and nerds it took to just sit here and look exactly the way Andy looks right now with that disgruntled employee look on his face, it cost a grip and a lot of time and obviously a lot of hair. And then I found Ecamm, and my first inclination was there's no way that at $40 a month, this thing can do what my $1,000 Wirecast can do. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is glorious. And I still kind of ignored it. And I said, my friend was like, oh, you should use this OBS thing. So I started using OBS. And just the Mac port, I'm a Mac guy, been a Mac guy forever, ex-Apple employee, the whole 9 yards. The Mac port was nasty. The interface was nasty. It looked like it was designed by a frog. And I know it works for some people. My brain doesn't want to do that. I like clean, right? I like my kitchen drawer is organized by size, shape, brand, color. Like my spicers are alphabetical. I cannot do weird interfaces. So I said, let me try this Ecamm thing again. And like it does everything the other thing does, but it was designed by somebody that understood where buttons go. And also it took away needing to care about bit rates and all this other stuff, which I fully understand, but I don't want to think about that. I want to turn the thing on. I want to press go. And then so, right when OS 10 became popular, there was the people that are like, oh, I don't like the way Apple is making all of this OS stuff so easy. I like to go in there and tweak and do all these things. And Apple's taking it away. No, it's still there. It's just in terminal. So you always had the people who were dangerous enough to do all of that stuff, but not dangerous enough to go in the terminal and write the code. or do the commands. Yeah, so we were basically showing off the C students and be like, no, everybody gets to be an A student now. We're going to do a bell curve. And so Ecamm sort of brought that ease of use. And then when you introduced us to End, and you're like, we can make the Zoom part even better with the no need to have an audio degree to make it work. I was like, bro, it was literally like the light shined down from the heaven above and was like, let's go. It was a beautiful situation, because really the number one thing it does for us is it eliminates tech support hassles.
Yeah,
Which you
that's
see all the
actually
time.
what you just said is something that I haven't heard mentioned enough on the other sort of release celebration streams, and that is that the way they've constructed this is you know how Zoom ran into some issues with original audio because too many people were turning it on when they shouldn't be turning it on. And the message that Zoom needed to give folks was, do me a favor, trust us. Like, trust us to handle your audio. And what Ecamm has done here is they've done the same thing. And the 99% of the Ecamm users for Zoom need to trust Ecamm to route their audio and take care of all. Now, ironically, for them, it's going to be by turning original audio on because we're sending sound effects and all that other stuff in. But if 99% of the folks just trust Ecamm and the way that they've implemented this to route the audio, to route the video, if they stop pressing all the buttons that Zoom gives them, ironically, it's going to work, or not ironically, it's going to work brilliantly. It's only when, you're dealing with folks like me who want to press a whole bunch of buttons that we end up screwing everything up. Andy, what on the back end or in the engine of this is really, what are the core features that you mentioned? Some of this the other day. I remember you talked about chat. But what are some of the core features of Zoom that can be revealed through these other platforms?
So one of the things that's really important to the Zoom strategy is being an open platform. And by that, we mean taking the core technology that we use to build our own products and making them available for other developers to do the same. And so our developer story has several different branches to it. You can use our protocols to build an application that sends audio and video over the internet, but is completely sort of white labeled. You can use our meeting SDK, which is what Ecamm and others are using to embed our Zoom product into their product and access meetings and webinars and events and things of that nature. You can also build web apps that deploy on the kind of the right-hand panel of Zoom. It's sort of like running it in a browser, but co-located with Zoom. And I saw Tamara had SPX graphics that's using kind of the Zoom app method of doing things, right? So we have, and then we have APIs, right, for people who are doing more data-based integrations through web APIs and things of that nature. So, and that's just scratching the surface before we even get into embedded platforms and things like that, right? So every possible area where we can open things up, we really take that very seriously. So in terms of what are we actually doing here? Well, this is a meeting SDK integration, and it's powered by something called raw data. And raw data is one of the big features of the Zoom SDKs that we worked on the liminal side when we came over, which was giving access to third parties to the actual video and audio streams inside of a informed consent workflow that allows everybody to know what's going on and manage that for the right security settings. So with Ecamm, they have access to an SDK that supports thousands of different functions. I mean, it would truly be too many to list. But I would say that the key tenets here are the raw data APIs, which lets them get the video and audio feeds from Zoom, and likewise return their own video and audio streams to Zoom. There's the ability to work with our chat and Q&A. So I'd say the interactive components, so engagement surfacing up through metadata interactions, not just audio and video. And then finally, the ability to then take all of that and present it in a familiar way, which is our default UI that we can surface up through the client as well. So there's workflows for, I'm pulling in guests, I'm sending guests to another place, but at the end of the day, it still boils just down to Zoom. And if you know how to use Zoom, you know how to bring remote guests into Ecamm. And that's another thing that we offer as part of the way that we build our SDKs. You can go make your own interface and do it a different way, or you can spawn our interface if that's what you prefer, and let that be the way that you manage the connections. So a lot of flexibility for developers on how they do that. I'm actually giving a session later this month on the nitty-gritty details if anyone's curious. July 26th, I'm going to give a whole talk about the actual code level things that are going on for integrations like Ecamm, and we'll get into more details at that point. But that's kind of the high level of how this works.
Amazing.
I've been
By the way,
saying that
just-
all week, Andy. People are like, I don't know how to use this new thing. You guys just upgraded. I'm confused. I'm like, you know how to use Zoom? Yeah, cool. You know how to use it. I'm out. Bye. And they're like, wait, no, wait. I go, no, just trust it. And so I didn't have David's, the T-shirt idea, trust Ecamm. But I'm like, you already know exactly what to do. I don't need to teach you anything. Just go do it and then call me back. Oh, that was easy. I was like, told you.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, just a quick shout out. Andy is here. I see Andy, a fellow Alpha Team tester for Ecamm Live for Zoom. So good to see you here.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah, I was on a call actually today with someone who was using Ecamm for Zoom, and they had done a recording and they just couldn't figure, there was something, it was blurry. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. They didn't know if it was Ecamm's fault or Zoom's fault. And I think we all here know whose fault it was. It was neither of them. It was Mac OS's fault because of that stupid portrait setting that is on by default and then is hidden whenever you have Ecamm open. You can't see it that it's active for Zoom when Ecamm is open. So, but yes, trust Ecamm, trust Zoom. Doc, do you want to talk about use cases? Do you want to show us anything behind the scenes? What do you want to? I'm particularly interested in use cases. Actually, and let me just tell you why. Sorry, and then I'll shut up. Because I think a lot of people are thinking about using this for the wrong thing. I think a lot of folks are imagining that here I am. So I'm gonna actually let's do this. All right. So I'm going to take you all behind the scenes, and I'm going to Doc. May I add you as a camera? Is that okay?
Yep.
I mean, you're already streaming out anyway. So, all right. So let's go in and we'll build a scene here. I've got me, and I'm going to drag Doc in. So now I've got this scene, and I think a lot of folks are imagining that once I can grab someone from a Zoom meeting, build a fancy scene with them, maybe have overlays and things like that, and then pump it right back into the same Zoom meeting. That's not how this works. Am I right about that?
You can send it back, right? But it's more of a confidence monitor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're going to have, and Andy described this best, I think. It's physics, right? If the audio from Doc is going from Doc to all of us, it's a nonstop flight. The video is going from Doc to me and then back to all of you, which means it's a one-stop flight. And so there's going to be a sync issue when you push this back in. And as we know here in the kitchen, the only tool that allows you to have a sync-free kind of production like this, do this type of thing, is Production Studio from Zoom itself and Zoom Events. So this is not the use case, what I'm doing right now, right? If I were to come out and try and have a show here talking to you, I mean, let's just test this real quick. Go ahead and say something. Let's see what the sync is like.
Let's see what the sync is like. It doesn't work. It's off.
It's off.
Well, it's funny. It's most noticeable for Doc, right? Because he knows kind of what it's going to look like to him. But for me in San Francisco, I'd say it's in a margin of error that I would
wouldn't
be
care,
okay.
right,
But
right.
The key is you can't guarantee. Right.
What's interesting is that, and
that's
for
the
me,
thing for us is we're always telling it's hard because people never. Okay, let me fix this. People who don't do this a lot don't inform their guests. Do not rely on the sync of your preview. It's a preview. It doesn't have to be perfect. The people at home will have a different look and they'll have a different level of sync. Your sync is definitely going to be further off. So don't stare at it. It's really just so you know that your melon's here and not here. That's all it's for. Like, you're not supposed to. Why are you looking at yourself? What are you, vain? Look at the. Yeah. So it's really hard to get people not to do it because, I mean, you know what it is. Anybody that's done broadcasts where you're man on the street, if there's a director monitor, the neophyte that you go to grab and say, hey, man, what do you think about the Celtics sweeping the Mavs? They'll look at the screen and they go, I think the Celtics are the number one basketball team in the world, which they're correct, but I mean, in that case, they sound stupid.
So for me, I don't have any sync issue with Doc. But again, that's because when I look at my screen, because the audio is coming direct and the video is also coming direct, it just happens to be coming direct to me through Ecamm. I'm not having to send it back into Zoom. So as a host or a producer, I wouldn't even know that there may be some, but Andy and Ray, you're saying it looks normal for you? When you look at my camera, you don't see any sync issues? Wow.
Kind of like Andy
it's-
said.
Tamara, this
it-
is normal. It's not just you. It's just people in general.
Yeah.
It looks normal for Zoom. You know, we're accustomed to people having a little bit of lag and that sort of. And every once in a while, you know, when he's finishing a word with a consonant, the lips don't quite close at the very same time that I hear the consonant. But the average, you know, just sort of watching somebody speak, it looks okay to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you
It's-
should see
it's-
me talk like that when I'm drunk. They'd never close. It's just-
Oh, dear God. Wait, they want a clap test. Yeah, I can see it.
Like
Yeah.
quarter second, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what we'd expect. You know, it's about a quarter second to get up to the Zoom cloud and down. So with adding an additional hop, you're going to be about a quarter second one way or the other. So, but
I
again,
have a question.
yes.
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
To all of the people in the room, when you're watching your favorite show on Netflix, do you ever pay attention to the fact that Netflix is always out of sync?
It bothers me sometimes.
It bothers me too, but like my other half doesn't pay attention. She's like, the killer's going to get her. And I was like, well, she shouldn't have went in the room. Like my other half has never mentioned to me, how come the lips don't match? Right? My mother-in-law has never mentioned, because it never matches to her because it's Japanese to English translation in her head. She's busy switching it back to, well, Okinawan to her. So we think about this stuff all the time. The average person in the audience doesn't see it anyway. We overanalyze. I just wanted to point that out.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think if I don't know that I've even noticed it.
Of course, because you're not paying attention to it. But go home and watch something now.
But I'm also, but
You just
right,
ruined
there,
it for you.
there is a
Yeah.
different. I mean, there is if I'm having a conversation with someone, I that whatever. It's physics. Like it's no one's fault. It is what it is.
That's RTMP. SRT
right.
will solve some of this. Not all of it, but some of it.
Andy, are you at liberty to say at all how Production Studio fixes the problem?
The way that Production Studio works is that it has other methods, especially in the context of a webinar, to make sure that the experience for the attendees is correct as compared to those in the meeting. So if you're a panelist and so basically a webinar, right, has these kind of separate spaces for the panelists and the attendees. And that opens the opportunity to do some changes to the attendee experience to make things line up. In a meeting where everything's one level and there's no buffering and there's no, you know, opportunity to do that. Even in Production Studio, the panelists are seeing a multi-spotlight of the people in the scene plus a confidence monitor that is out of sync by a quarter second. So in Production Studio, in the meeting area, which is what we call the panel, they have the same experience that we're having right now. It's the attendees of the webinar that have the opportunity to see things in sync, right? So what's interesting about that is that a webinar is basically collapsing down this, what we call the transport meeting setup, right? Where you would have a meeting with your talent, you all get together, you bring in Ecamm, let's say, and you produce an output, and then you stream that somewhere else. That stream, of course, is in sync, and now you could deliver that to a webinar or another meeting,
Right.
and it would show up to that other webinar or meeting in sync. The idea with Production Studio is that we kind of collapse that down into just one webinar, and we have the opportunity to insert that channel for the attendees to get everything in line, because there is that kind of implicit separation of the presenters and the audience, which we don't have in the context of a meeting.
Right. We could hypothetically, using any of these tools, Ecamm, vMix, any of them, run Ecamm for Zoom, have your guests in that meeting, and then on the same machine, just using the vanilla client, use the virtual camera and push what you're producing into another meeting. The problem is, and what production studio solves is everyone gets to see the chat. Everyone gets to see the same Q&A. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore. Andy, I saw a note. You just, I don't know if you meant to mention this, but I saw a note in the release notes. Something about the two recording and live streaming the capture modes.
Mm-hmm.
That for internal uses, that there's going to be a way to say, don't remind me about this anymore. You're not going to, that's kind of, now it's just for internal, which I assume is within business, like within a business account or enterprise account, right?
Right. So like imagine we had our, a developer stand up every morning and we're going to record that for record keeping purposes. But we're going to, it's going to have all of our internal people. It's not going to have external guests and things like that coming into it. There's going to be some more flexibility about how to, those notices that you get, when you join a meeting, how to make sure that you have a less friction, less things to click through when you jump into the call. I think if you look at the journey on notifications, by the way, over the past 6-9 months, let's say, it's been a lot of evolution on that, and it's been very intentional. It used to be the case that for various regulatory reasons or for just wanting to be upfront and transparent, you would end up joining a meeting and have 6 different windows stacked on top of each other, right? Okay, yes, I understand, got it, and before you'd actually get to your gallery view, right? And now I think we have this nice balance between giving the information that you need, but also allowing notifications to be kind of bundled in together and show up, in a collective way that's fewer clicks to get to the meeting, right? So, but there's that delicate balance, right? Because people need to be informed about what's going on. They need to understand the circumstances. They need to understand what Zoom is and isn't doing with their data. Very important, but also we need to be able to get to the meeting and do what we need to do and not totally obstruct people with endless pop-ups that then eventually they just gloss over and stop reading.
I still have that window on window on window in Tiles and in OSC and things like that don't have the latest, that are built on the latest builds. So what's exciting about this, what this change that you're making is, I know that in the eCam community, there has been, and I guess continues to be, a lot of questioning, and maybe Doc, you can address this, about those 2 capture modes. And the fact that even if I'm not recording, even if I'm not live streaming, I have to tell everybody in the Zoom that I am. And that's been, people have worried about that. And I wonder if at some point this new functionality of allowing people to say once, I get it, you're welcome to record me whenever you want, and not have to keep hitting that button. I wonder if that will eventually come to known users or maybe people outside of a business. I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a good question because I never think about it.
I don't either. Yeah.
Like I guess it's weird because how hard is it to just inform people? Sorry, at Apple, Steve had a thing that they always told us: set expectations, set expectations, set expectations. So, and anybody's ever been in for service, you've probably been through this at one point or another. Somebody would come in to do a top case replacement. So if you guys remember the plastic MacBooks, the black and white, we got the Zebra MacBooks, the top case used to always crack. It was a really horrible design. When you slam the notebook, the magnets would just bust through the plastic. So we used to replace those for free because it was just a horrible design idea. When someone would come in and say, hey, my MacBook is cracking, I heard I can get it fixed, we'd be like, yeah, it's good. We'll get it back to you in like 5 days. And they would kind of freak out or whatever because we always said 5 days. And literally, they would walk out the store, go to Starbucks. I can replace the top case in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. We used to race. And while they're still in line at the Starbucks, yeah, George, your MacBook you brought in for a top case replacement? Yeah, come and get it. It's ready. Hey, they told me it was going to be 5 days. Yeah, we had some time, so we just did it right now because the store wasn't busy. Oh, my God, this is the greatest thing on earth, right? But if I told him I could do it in an hour, and then David came in and asked me a complicated questions about photos, and it took me 3 hours, yo, you're pissed. But if I tell you 5 days and call you in 10 minutes, you're like through the roof. Apple is the best. So if you set the expectation, no problem. And why so many people are afraid to set expectations with their guests, I really don't understand. You guys all know better. So I just ask that you help your brethren understand. Just set expectations, bro. Just tell them. You know, the internet might do something stupid. Here's the contingency plan. You might get messages about recording. This is why he has to do that. Just tell them. And I don't know why people refuse to do that.
Well, it's so, yes, I think in the circles that you and I are in, I agree with you 100%. Frank, and I don't know if you're willing to jump in here, Frank, but I mean, circles that you work in are, it's not enough to just say, because you're dealing with enterprise level stuff, right?
Yeah, I read the announcement or the release notes, and the thought that jumped to my mind is if as an admin I want to allow people to dismiss these, is there a log somewhere I can consult if they come back and say I didn't consent to this? And you go, on Tuesday the 7th, you clicked yes, here's the log from the server. That would make me as an admin happier.
It's a great question. You don't happen to know, Andy, if there's a log, do you?
Not off the top of my head.
No. That's a great question. Yeah.
I don't know if we track it either, but what I would do is if you are using it, I would open your console and then start the meeting and check it and watch for the console change.
Yeah.
If we're logging it, you can see it.
I could absolutely imagine, you know, if Doc and I are regularly on a show together, that at some point, Ecamm for Zoom can know that. Well, actually, I shouldn't say this because I don't know how Zoom knows who the other person is. Like, do I have a unique identity when I join a meeting? If I'm logged in, presumably, do I have a unique identifier? Does Zoom know who I am? Can Zoom know, oh, David said yes, he allows recording in Doc's meeting in the past?
I mean, there is a concept of preferences. This is probably most evident with who you give remote control access to. There's actually a whole data storage in your client where you can audit who you've given permissions to. This is also true for app integrations as well, who's allowed to have cache in your Zoom workplace client. So there's several areas where that's the case. I think it's, you have to look at each of them individually to see exactly what is and isn't tracked. As that's a sensitive question about what isn't done. So short of referring back to the privacy policy, I would just say take a look at those in-client settings because they do give you quite a bit of information about what's there.
Yeah. Jason says there's a log on recording permissions for guests of the meeting.
Oh, and check this out. Hey, listen. I have David Paskins, TTG Productions, TTG Tiles, Mike Lotta, Andy Carluccio. I said it right, Andy. I got Frank. So yeah,
what is that?
The log
what is
here.
that giving you though?
UUID.
Oh,
I have a UUID for each one of you guys.
It will be specific. So that will be specific to Ecamm's client. We don't give the SDK cross meeting tracking ability. We just give everybody a unique identifier. So programmatically, you can identify certain participants, but it's ephemeral. It only lasts for
actually, because this is probably coming from the camera names, right? Because I need to name
this
the
is
camera
coming from the
so
participant. So it looks like they're printing out the structure that we provide, which is like, all right, the name and ID pairing, so that the rest of we're getting into the SDK now, but like, you don't say in the code, like, Spotlight Doc Rock, you say Spotlight and then a number. And that way, just people with the same name, right? We know kind of who we're talking about here. So we issue a temporary ID to everybody involved. So,
because I know at least 7 David Paskins. I'm joking.
Really?
I'm joking. You were asking about use cases earlier. I'll tell you the dumb use case I built this morning just because it was super funny. I wanted to play the Hollywood Squares, so I built the Hollywood Squares.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So I could literally add a person to all of these, and then I would jokingly, we swapped the square to put active speaker in the middle because John Ong said, hey, let's put the active speaker in the middle. And then I wouldn't be a contestant, more likely I would be here. And then I would put the 2 contestants here, and then you would just bring up the questions. I got my little clock Like I could totally build the Hollywood Squares. And if you're old enough to know what that is, you're old.
You win. So here's my Hollywood Squares, just using tiles. Works
Yeah, I
brilliantly.
told myself I'm not installing that until after all of these Ecamm for Zoom things are over, because I will sit in my office and tweak out.
Oh my God,
for
it's so
hours.
much. It is so much fun. It is, and it's so
I'm not
addictive.
listening to you, Andy. I'm not listening to you.
It really
not for
is.
another
It's
week.
so much fun. By the way, just as an aside, that the whole recording live streaming thing, it it turns out that it's more important than I realized. I mean, I was using a sort of a meeting that had been set up, a persistent meeting that was set up, which automatically granted recording privileges so that for testing purposes. So I would log in, I just actually was logged in all the time on this other computer to that meeting, testing tiles, and then I would change it to live streaming and it wouldn't work. And it didn't dawn on me that they're giving only recording permissions, not live streaming permissions. So,
And the permission setup, I think sometimes people get confused about. And what we're really doing is two things at once. We're surfacing a notice, which we've all kind of just been discussing. We're also using a permission structure. So, for example, if the person who organized the meeting, let's say, turned off recording for the meeting, then you're not going to be able to use recording capture mode because that's not enabled for this meeting. So it's not, I think some people assume incorrectly that it's just controlling what notice we send out. And it's not. It's actually using the entire permissions chain. So if that permission is not available in the meeting or hasn't been delegated to the user or hasn't, gone through what it's supposed to go through in order to take place, it's not going to happen. So it's not just a kind of an aesthetic choice about how you want to message what you're doing. It actually has a functional purpose. It doesn't change anything about the quality of the video feeds or the structure of that, how many you can pull. That's all unrelated. But it definitely looks at the structure of the meeting and the setup of the user to make sure that they're allowed to do what it is they're trying to do. It's not just a choice of how you notify.
Interesting. I just want to bring in some comments here that that Ray is mentioning that, and by the way, so doing this using the Ecamm for Zoom integration and just bringing in the comments from Zoom, which is, I think this is from Zoom. Yeah, this is from Zoom, which is amazing. That the allow host to unmute you is persistent, which is really nice. So presumably then allow host to record you, hypothetically, could also be persistent. But then David Brady, hi, David on YouTube, is reminding us that in the United States, federal law requires at least one party to consent to recording a conversation in person, by phone, or electronically. At least one person. Can that one person be me as the recorder? Or does it have to be, I don't know.
Yeah, that's to stop wiretapping.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's, one party consent, two party consent. There's a bunch of different rules about that. I'll save myself getting into any of that on the Zoom side, but
yeah. And then recording permission shows up in attendance reporting, Jason says.
At least for guest users. I don't know if,
Interesting.
if
Okay.
it's like if you're on the same tenant, whether that's also in the report.
Huh. Interesting. So, Doc, you're using it for Hollywood Squares, and have you used interview mode since this came out in Ecamm?
Oh yeah, because I wanted to show somebody that you could do both. So
Okay.
last week Friday in the demonstration, because people just ask. It's funny, like this is my job on a daily basis, is to try to bring people from the edge. Someone's like, I want to do a stream with 18 people. I'm like, okay, I'll show you how to do it. Your audience is going to hate you, but let me show you how to do it anyway. And then so, we just use a combination of interview mode and Zoom together. I think that, at the end of the day, they're relatively the same, but there's something about the Zoom situation. I have a bunch of people who interview actors and athletes, and I have another friend of mine that does interview with some of the local politicians, and you don't have to teach them how to do Zoom. Even though the Chrome situation is pretty much brain dead, it just freaks people out because it's just unfamiliar. And all of us in here who are family tech support knows that the most common sense things in tech don't register because the word tech or computer is involved, and people just instantly go to a place of, I don't understand that. And it's like, but you understand, like Andy said, it's physics. We're going to talk about physics here. And remove the tech side of this and just understand the physics of how this works. And then they can't because they're so stuck off the tech. Must be difficult. Yeah. So Zoom is dope in the fact that it has become the Kleenex of meeting tools, or the Xerox of meeting tools. If he says, here's the Zoom link, that person never freaks out. They just show up.
Yeah. And I'll say
That's
this,
what I love about it.
I don't know whether or not this will carry any weight anymore because I work at Zoom, but I'll give you just a little bit of the history on the liminal side. You know, I started trying to use everything but Zoom when I started liminal. I tried Chromium-based WebRTC solutions. I built an app called Streamweaver that used SRT as a transport protocol. I tried a lot of open source teleconferencing systems, and then all of the kind of the usual suspects: WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft, all of them in the UCaaS space. And I think the point that Doc just made about comfort for the guests is really important, because what I found was that I could build a very complex pipeline that back in 2020 gave me more hooks and access than I had with some of the more popular products. You know, you could stand up your own turn servers and build a custom WebRTC solution that looked any way you wanted and did anything you wanted. But the moment you brought a guest on and it was something they'd never seen before, they became uncomfortable, right? And when they became uncomfortable, the quality of the conversation suffered. And so I always get a little frustrated now when I see all the hoops that certain producers or groups put their guests through in order to get them ready to be on air. And I'm not talking about tech checks. I'm talking about things that are about just in service purely of the pipeline to make it easy to produce the show. The steps that people have to go through in order to be ready to participate in broadcast and other types of systems are extremely inconvenient. And I think it hurts the quality of the conversation that happens, right? And the conversation should be the most important thing, right? The tech shouldn't be controlling where that conversation can go or can't go. And that's been the thesis of why we built the liminal tools, right? Because I come from theater and I didn't want the aesthetic of Zoom to be impacting what we could and couldn't do with the medium, right? Just because of the tools we were using. And so we've tried to bring that mentality now into event production and broadcast and say, all right, well, we know that the guests are comfortable doing these things. So how do we let them just focus on that and build infrastructure on the back end side to make it possible that the broadcasters can also do the things that they need to do? So everybody gets what they want out of this. And we handle the work in the middle to make sure that the guests are comfortable. So, when I see I think the best example of this that I see still in use today is the call per guest, where they set up a one-on-one call with the studio for each person they're going to bring into the program. And they bridge it with a mix minus in the studio and send a customized mix minus back for each user. The problem with that is it doubles the latency for everybody who's there, because it's one hop to the studio and one hop back with the cloud in the middle. And when you double the latency of the conversation, the guests feel it, and they don't even know that that's what the problem is, but they're stepping on each other. Yep. They're getting uncomfortable, right? And now they don't see the gallery view of all the other people that are in the meeting. They just see the mix minus return. And I think it really harms the conversation. So all of these integrations that we've been focused on to bring it back to Zoom, everything that we've been doing here is about, let's let just a normal Zoom meeting take place, and then production can layer on top of that, right? And that's what's, I think, really special, is when it looks and feels the same way as it normally feels to check in with your family, or to have your business meeting, or to talk to your customers, right? When getting on an event feels the same way as the way that you're participating in the virtual space and all your other work and all your other parts of your life, you get just implicitly more relaxed and you have a better conversation. So that's been the thread through all the integrations, is how do we make sure that we make this very easy for the guest onboarding so you have a better quality conversation?
You can feel it for sure. And I never really thought about how you can feel it, but even the way, one of the most high tech and perfectly set up systems is the way we do it at Twit. And even then, we were using individual machines and bringing all those individual machines put back together.
I remember the Skype when you guys used the Skypeosaurus.
Yeah. Like I built one. I built one for myself for when I was at TUAW. It was a pain in the butt. It's like 6 Mac Minis and then the sound design MIG board
and credit
a
though
whole
to,
bunch of
you know,
patch cables,
to everybody
but
who was involved in building those, because at the time that was
right.
the only way to get the individual
that was
streams,
the only
right?
way we could do it.
And now there's better ways to do it, right? And that's been the focus. Is I wanted us to evolve from those individual one-on-one caller systems to the multi-party call system, while still getting everything that the broadcasters need, which are the individual video and audio feeds. And that's why we built ZoomISO, and that's why we built ZoomISO technology into all of the major hardware, software environments that are used for production. Wherever we can get our SDKs into, wherever we can bridge from, be it Pro AV Zoom Rooms or ZoomISO, that's kind of the goal at the end of the day.
I think the cool thing to keep in the back of our heads, gang, is this is the worst it's ever going to be this week. It will be better next week and the week after that and the week after that. As long as Andy's around.
That's right.
Oh, goodness.
That's right. So check this. So we had Andy posted a challenge last week, which I'm the only one who posted something.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad about that.
But yeah, and I actually, all right, now I'm going to change these right now on the fly because I don't like the way these look. Got to make those square. Got to make this one square. Okay. So this is a scene this is a combination of Ecamm for Zoom and tiles here. So you've got me, Doc over here. This is actually an active speaker placeholder. And I have a question about this for both of you, I guess. And then this is just the tiles. Now tiles right now, you can't say, I only want the outside grid. So I just layered it on top and I, have another one with just me, but you get the idea. So here's my question. Right now, to get the active speaker camera, if someone else became active speaker, Doc would not change because he's the only camera that I've added. Will there come a time when Ecamm for Zoom is able to, once you've initiated permissions, you've started the capture engine, when Ecamm for Zoom will be able to smartly switch the active speaker in and out without going over that 8-person limit or whatever the limit is?
So full disclosure, I had the same feedback and the SDKs do support this. So I'll talk to Ken and Glenn about how, but we do. So like ZoomISO has an active speaker output. It doesn't have to be one of your other outputs. It listens to active speaker and subscribes to them. There may be other technical reasons why Ecamm doesn't do it this way, but I can show them how to do that. Yeah, it's possible.
They probably just went for what they thought was the most logical way.
Well, active speaker was a really late addition to the alpha or the beta, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because again, I think the thing to understand is these guys don't spend a lot of time hanging out in Zoom meetings, because if they did, the software would suck. They spend a lot of time doing coding.
Right.
They don't spend a lot of time hanging out in a Facebook group and doing all this other stuff. They come in and check every once in a while, as any good founders do. But what makes them so good is they spend all of their time coding. People are like, well, how come this app does this and you guys don't do this? They don't even know. They don't spend their time staring at the competition. They spend their time coding.
It's fantastic how little they knew about Zoom. It really was.
They just literally, this is why the app is so good, though. All they're thinking about 24/7 is how do I make the app better. They don't care what OBS is doing or what Restream or StreamYard or anybody else is doing. They care, what does this next person in our group need to get their job done. And I love that about them. But we've been out to dinner, and then Ken had an idea, and he just disappeared in the middle of dinner. And I go outside. He's outside holding the laptop in one hand and fixing the code in the other hand and pushing the update by dessert.
Yeah.
I knew right then and there I was in the right spot.
Yeah.
Because when I was at Apple, the one thing we never really did, we don't pay attention to what the competition is doing. People on YouTube and the news be talking that smack. We don't care what anybody else is doing. You cannot feed your family staring at what your neighbor's eating. It just doesn't work. So I really thought that was cool about them. So they probably just didn't know. And so Andy, if you bring it up to them and they think it makes more sense, they'll fix it.
There's no
So the
problem.
reason I just want to say, sorry. So the reason that just switched is that I just added Andy as a camera. Andy, did you get a pop-up or something?
No.
So, okay. So I just want to clarify
I'll
this.
add you. It won't make a pop up.
Right. So once the only pop-up that people get is the first time.
Yes.
Once you do it the first time, I could randomly go around and add whoever I want, and they would just be there.
So that pop-up appears for everybody in the meeting the first time. So everybody consents at that moment, and there's no need to do it on a per-person basis because everybody already agreed to it. So
Which is why the active speaker should be able to work, because everyone's already...
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what they're doing right now is they're just looking to see when the active speaker callback comes in, is it one of my inputs? If it's one of my inputs, automatically move it into this guest position. And there's other ways you could do that. You have a wildcard input that is just using the ID or things like that. And again, but what I just want to dovetail with what Doc was saying.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Now, this is interesting. Sorry. I just want to report what just happened here. So Doc requested permission to live stream.
And you lost your capture.
And and I didn't lose it. It just capture just sort of turned off by itself.
Yeah, that's on the list.
Interesting. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well,
just live bug reporting here.
It's one of those things too that only shows up in the lab. Like in the real world, like there usually aren't multiple systems that are trying to produce different events simultaneously from the same meeting. So it's one of those cases
so
that
funny you say that. We had to do that in the Zoom Alpha when we first started Alpha. Everyone was like, "Well, it doesn't do this and this." I was like, "Listen, people, I want you to unplug your Rodecaster and your Stratocaster and your freaking Zoom. I want you to put in a USB mic, even if that's your Apple headphones, and start from there. Because you guys are starting from NASCAR, and most people are going to be on a skateboard. I need you to back it up, sister."
Yeah, but I do want to, before we move on, I just want to emphasize that one of the things that I've really appreciated about the Ecamm team, which has stood out to me time and time again, is the focus that Ken and Glenn have on the customer use case. And they really, they have not been constrained by, oh, this is how our code works, or this is what our blah, blah, blah. They've been very open to feedback. They've been very receptive. And, we try to help all of our integration partners hit a certain bar. And the reason that I think, are in a good position to do that is because we also make a commercial application that uses the very same SDK that they use, which I think is something unique to Zoom strategy, right? The fact that I have a support inbox for ZoomISO with many amazing people who are behind the answers to those questions that come in, that report back to me and tell me what is the high friction, what are the things we need to improve. Well, we don't just keep that to improve our own product, right? We tell that to the third-party developers as well and say, hey, you might want to have this idea of a capture engine, right, to explain this very complex thing about permission structures, right? You might want to try, talking about the interplay between cloud recording and local recording and all that stuff and how that makes sense and help guide a little bit. So it's not, the relationship that we've been able to build with Ecamm is beyond just simple tech support on the SDKs. We've really been able to have, I think, these deep discussions about features and workflows and users. And I always appreciate when a developer offers that level of openness to us, because we're generally want to help and figure this out together. And likewise, they give us great feedback as well. And that's the other piece of this, that the rising tide moves all ships, right? Like Ecamm has given tremendous feedback about the SDKs, areas we could improve. Those circulate then into the product and they go to every developer who utilizes those SDKs. They can take advantage of the same thing. So we've really built a community here around these broadcast developers that have been kind of siloed. And I think now what we've done is we built a pattern across the industry of how these remote guest systems work, at least in the context of Zoom. So you build sort of a muscle memory across these applications, which is really, I think, important.
Have they been talking to each other? The different Memo, Ecamm, vMix?
There are a few. There are a few that have kind of.
I mean, that sounds like a really powerful opportunity. They're all working on the same integrations. Yeah.
I think so. And that's why I'm excited about the developer summit as well, to be honest with you. It's an opportunity to get all these people together and let them talk and cross-pollinate and then observe kind of what are the commonalities, what are the areas that we need to improve on the Zoom side, but what are the things that, somebody found out in their integration that somebody else can benefit from. And there is that cooperative spirit. And I think that's really great, because you see a lot of, in the competitive landscape, you see a lot of daggers and knives throwing. And I think this has been a nice sort of reprieve from some of that. You see a really cooperative energy.
We've talked a few times. Robert, we'll throw you some use cases in just a moment. but I just want to say that we've talked on here in the kitchen quite a bit about how we're all a bunch of weirdos. I mean, we're using Zoom in ways that Zoom was never intended to be used, and we're pushing the boundaries, and we're, most normal folks are just logging onto meetings, and the fact that Zoom is easy enough to use for those folks and robust enough for us is really quite a statement about that application. And the same, I think, is true for Ecamm.
Yes.
Doc, I think you actually posted someone was asked, so do we now have to use Zoom? Like, can you get an Ecamm without Ecamm for Zoom? And someone said, you know what, just don't turn it on. If you probably haven't turned on 50% of the capacity of what Ecamm can actually do. It's so easy for the newcomers, and it is, and yet can be so robust for people who want to do something more in depth.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that was grandfather's house in the wintertime. You got jackets and stuff on because dude refused to turn on the heat. He was just cheap. He would, everybody's house had heating. It just depended on whether your parents wanted to pay that bill. So some of us lived in jackets in the house.
Right. All right. Robert is asking, and I'm going to pass this over to you, Doc. Use cases. When would you use this? And I'll be right back.
All right. Well, this use case question to me is one of the hardest questions because it is the sky is the limit, so to speak, right? Yeah, I almost put in like, what's the use case for water? Drinking, cutting, cooling, like, so you could do whatever. I want to do a radio show, just make that, right? I want to do a question and answer type show, I could do that. I want to do a four-headed podcast with ISO recordings, I can do that. I want to teach a class on how to use Final Cut Pro, and I want people to come in and show me specific places where they are getting stuck with their production. I could not only have my Final Cut open and have their, myself and them on screen together, I could have them show me what they're working on and share that with the audience and then sort of work from there. So, I mean, it's really hard to put a definition on use cases, but I tell you, I like the question because this comes up for us all the time. Oh, Ecamm would be so much better if you guys would put templates in, because then people could just know where to start. Because we start straight vanilla. You get nothing, right? You get a window. And Ken and Glenn keeps thinking about templates, and I in the cartoon, the devil in one side and the angel on this side, and they kind of tell you what to do. Every time they start thinking about templates, I'm like, you don't want to put in templates. Don't put in templates. Oh, but it will make it so much easier. Yes, but I know when anyone is using StreamYard instantaneously. I know when anyone is using Restream instantaneously, because if you give people the opportunity to, and now it's better, but since most of us are around the same age, freaking Andy messing up the curve. When PowerPoint first came out, there wasn't a meeting you can go to that didn't have the blue template or the orange template that came with PowerPoint 1. Every single meeting you went to had the blue one with the little diamonds or the orange one with the little stripe on the side. Every single one. It was super irritating. Then Keynote came along and it shipped with like 20 templates. And then PowerPoint was like, oh, we better step our game up. And now it ships with a bunch. And even still, if you let people just go and not change it, they won't change it. So it's kind of a weird situation where I don't want to scare you and just tell you the 5 I came up with. I'm probably going to tell you just about everything you think you can do, you can do. The one that blows my mind to this day, and it comes up once a week, the ribbon is you can still hold that 1,000 person meeting if your account allows you to do that, and only have 3 of us on screen. But the 1,000 people in the gallery can still be there. I think that's the part that's just amazing to me.
I'll give
Right.
you three use cases, Robert, on the technical side, because I completely agree with Doc that we would spend the rest of this meeting talking about different ways. I mean, what is the use case for production, right? Like, it's like we're going to be here forever, right? Going through that, right? But for the Ecamm Zoom integration on the technical side, I find that it's most helpful for having an easy way to bring in guests to create some sort of production, right? You got remote talent. You want to bring them into your show and see them and hear them. I want to be able to send the produced output of Ecamm back into Zoom without having to go through virtual audio cables, mix minus, and virtual webcam drivers. And the third one is highlighting interactivity. I want to show my chat and Q&A up on screen so I can create a dialogue with the audience by highlighting their engagement and encouraging them to participate more deeply. So on the technical side, those features are where I gravitate to. But there's all sorts of other stuff. There's ISO recording of all your guests for post-production, right? There's all these other places we could go with it. I think in those three buckets, there's a lot of different types of shows you can make with just those three features.
And I just want to jump back and say what I started with, which is what this has done is it's simplified the process. So I now, on my computer, I have one app open. I have Ecamm open, and Zoom is built right into it. And like Andy said, I mean, I did turn on manual audio because I do want to route my audio in certain ways, but I didn't have to choose my camera. I didn't have to choose my this. It just works. It just works. And so I don't join any meetings now from, I mean, I still have the vanilla Zoom client because I use other things in there, but yeah. Frank, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a question. Accessibility is a huge issue. Zoom's doing a really good job with accessibility, captions, translated captions, sign language interpreter view. Does that stuff come across to Ecamm?
It should. It should be there in the user interface that's spawned by Ecamm. That is the Zoom window, right? So the and Doc can probably speak to like what accessibility considerations are specific to the Ecamm side, but for the Zoom side, that client that pops up, you can see the translated captions coming in. It has its own set of shortcuts that can be used with it. Ecamm actually takes it a little farther, and they have a whole Stream Deck integration. This is more on the production side, but you can kind of imagine other use cases that might be helpful in the accessibility space for setting up buttons and macros that you can trigger from a whole host of different systems. So we do kind of bundle, and that's one of the advantages, by the way, of allowing developers to kind of reuse our user interface, is that we have thought of all of these things, and then they can be kind of implicitly available in the integration, which is not the case for everybody who deploys an integration. But in the Ecamm case, they do offer our user interface that is something that has all those features bundled in.
Yeah. So this is wait, I clicked the wrong button. So this is the meeting that I'm in, and I enabled what do you call it?
Speaker attribution captions.
Thank you. Captions right here. So I have all of that same functionality that I would have in any Zoom meeting. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for our people to wrap their head around. It's like, well, how is Ecamm for Zoom different from Zoom? I'm like, well, we kind of put the whole Zoom inside of Ecamm. So majority of what you're used to doing in Zoom is still there. So nothing's going to really get taken away from you per se. And again, I'm still impressed that whiteboard still works, because that's a fun one, right? It's very handy when you're trying to plan stuff out, or, we're trying to do the other day we were trying to do this is strange, and people don't understand this. I'm marketing team. I'm actually not support team. And I have to do email flows. Email flows hurt my brain, except for my old teacher in college. She made us learn how to use flowcharts for COBOL, and I thought it was stupid, and I hated it. Now I just want to call Mrs. Lai and be like, hey, I'm sorry, because this really helps. So we bust out the whiteboard, and we're doing the flow, because we're going to do this email campaign, and we want to make sure the sequence is right, and where they're going to fall out, where the loops are, where the traps are. It's amazing. So be able to pull up whiteboard for that, be able to do AI companion to get just a conversation summary at the end. Zoom clips still works. Like all of the cool stuff you're used to is still there. So I think that part is amazing to me. And we do, if you're just doing your ISOs, we do have a SRT file that ends up in your folder, which if you have, some program like ChatGPT or whatever that you want to run those SRTs on, you can totally do that because you have a full transcript at the end. But I just use the built-in AI companion in Zoom because it's cool. You do have to ask for permission. So if I press this, David's going to get, hey, can you please let him have the meeting summary? Unless he already said it for everybody.
I think I set it up for everyone. I pretty much turned everything on.
Why was my name mentioned? Or was my name mentioned? That's the best part about the AI summary.
You know what I love about the AI at the end?
Off.
If you go to, I just saw this for the first time today because I was showing it off with, this is great. In the Zoom, let me see if this will work. I'm not sure if this will work because I have to log into a different Zoom account and that may screw everything up. Switch account. So if you go into a recording that you've done, at the very bottom, hold on, I have to put my code in. Okay. Let me go to recordings. And I'll share my screen. All right. So this is a recording of a meeting that we had, which we don't actually need to watch. But so you've got the smart chapters and all that stuff at the bottom here. But then if you look on Meeting Coach, this is really interesting to me. You can have for each person their talk-listen ratio, the longest spiel, filler words, their talk speed, patience, and then it tells you, it gives you, like it kind of talks you through. So, for example, my talk listen ratio recommended is 25 to 85%. That's not bad. Usually I talk too much, so that's not bad. My longest spiel, it's recommended that it be smaller than 230. I'm a little higher than 230, so I have to take note of that. I don't use a lot of filler words. I talk way too fast, apparently. Oh, no. Yeah, I talk way too fast. And I'm very patient, which is lovely. And you get this for everybody in the meeting. It's just fascinating. I mean, if you think about, how can I use these tools, which is what I think everyone here is all about. How can I use these tools to teach better, to lead better, to inspire more, to do whatever it is that we're doing, to do it better, then paying attention to some of these details, like, am I talking too much? Am I using filler words? And having these insights right here is it's fantastic. It really is.
The best thing of the end was if I use filler words.
Yeah, right.
But that was super funny. Mike, you just said something I completely forgot about. Oh my God, Mike, I love you. I used to do talk radio when I was in radio. I did regular radio, but on Sunday nights, we would have to do this thing called Top Radio because it was our give back to the community. And we used to do a call-in show. And I often get requested from some of our broadcast partners, like, how do we do call-in shows? You can just use Zoom, because Zoom you can call from the phone. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, that's Learner to Learner
pretty-
on YouTube
cool.
said that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
the comment came from. I got it.
Yeah, Mike is. Thank you, Mike. By the way, who's been bringing in all of these comments. And yes, longest spiel is an actual metric. It's,
apparently we disagree on the spelling of spiel.
Well, yeah, I would have an H in there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
My wife says the same thing. Yeah.
Does she really? That's
How many
fantastic.
ounces is a schmear?
A schmear, right. Well, you measure spiels in bananas, I think. So let's see. I want to make sure, guys, you've been incredibly generous with your time. It's already 4:10. So let me just so that you all have the freedom to jump off whenever you want. Anyone who's watching right now, if you'd like to give Ecamm a try, you can jump on, and the Ecamm team has very generously given us a 25% discount code. Use the code Zoom Test Kitchen when you're checking out on your first month, first payment, first year, whatever it is, and you can grab that and play around with that. So I popped that in the chat here on Zoom. Mike has given me I was going to say he's given me the finger. He's not giving me the finger. He gave me a finger that says that he's copying that and putting that in YouTube. Thank you, Katie and the team for doing that for us. Yeah. So and again, feel free to jump off whenever you need to. But are we missing?
I want to make sure that Tamara gets her question asked.
Oh, Tamara,
whatever.
Go for it. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, Tamara, your hand was up. I'm so sorry.
That is okay. I'm totally cool. I'm going to ask a super practical question. I'm assuming someone else has this question as well. So I play in the theater live world and got stuck into Zoom because we all closed down, and I've kind of stayed. I'm ready to try Ecamm, and I'll find the craziest use cases for it because that's what I do with Zoom. Here's my thing. I've been hesitant because every time I hear what are the requirements? What is I've got an M2 basic Mac Mini. Can Ecamm run on that, or am I really needing to upgrade higher? So talk to me about what
anything you want with an Ecamm. I'm sorry, I can't speak English. See what you did, David? I normally speak without having problems. You can do anything you want with an M2, period, point blank. The only thing that we don't suggest is we don't suggest a MacBook Air, only for the fact that the thermals will kick in when you don't want it to, and it will cause a problem. But I have even done 8 people 4K stream on an M2 MacBook Air. My everyday conference workhorse machine is a October 2020 M1 Mac Mini, and I take that thing to conferences and do Ecamm demos on portable Wi-Fi's. I basically bond 2 portable Wi-Fi's because everybody knows that conference Wi-Fi is like 10 grand for a 1 gig upload. It's super stupid. So I bring a telephone and a portable Wi-Fi, and I carry that thing, and I do whole entire conferences just with that. Or we'll walk around NAB with a Mac Mini in a backpack, and it just works. So yeah, you're good to go at it.
So,
is it a MacBook Pro or a Studio, or what is it?
No, listen, I've got a little of everything, but I have an empty, brand new, just base model Mac Mini M2 that I would love to just give Ecamm to it.
You'll be fine. You'll be
all day long.
That'll just be that production machine, and I wouldn't put anything else on there.
That's the one that's the thing I suggest, what you just said. I suggest to people all the time.
Yeah.
Go to Costco right now. A 8 gig M2 Mac Mini, $499.
Yep.
And use that as a dedicated machine, and don't put nothing else on there except for Ecamm, Safari, and Chrome, and Zoom. Leave everything else off, and it'll be gangster.
I gotta take my ATEM stuff off of it, but that's okay.
But you know what? But that's the key. I mean, we harp on 8 gigs or 16 gigs, and look, it should always be a cry once, buy once, and get as much as you could afford. But having said that, and Daniel Chi said this the other night. By the way, the other night was on Sunday night, was it the streaming show?
Sunday was a perfect use case right there.
It was so, the whole thing fell apart, and it was fantastic because you got to see them fix it, and it was a really great show to see them use all these different tools. But one of the things that Daniel said, which really is important, is you're gonna have and actually Andy said this the other day also, you're gonna have better luck running isolated apps or processes on isolated computers. So for example, the context, Andy, that you had mentioned this was running OSC or the vanilla Zoom client and Tiles on the same machine. And you said, you know what, put Tiles on a different machine. It does not need to be high powered at all. This is an M1, I think 8 gig Mac Mini that it's running on. and I'm having zero problems whatsoever with it. And then I run Ecamm on a different computer, and that's it.
Again, there's like, there's no need to be afraid to experiment as well, right? So if you don't, I think some people have a fear of playing around and trying things out without all the requisite hardware in place. There's no judgment, right? If you just run it on the things that you have, and just so long as you're aware that there are some limits you may run up against. But I think in the case of the M2 Mac Mini, you're going to not even run into that. But what I was trying to say in the context of that was that they were having issues with like resolution and all that. I'm like, well, you're probably blowing up your CPU right now with ZoomISO and OBS and tiles all trying to do things at the same time on the same system, right? And like if you have trouble with the experience, like it's fine that you're playing with it, but just be aware, right? That like if you're having problems, like the first step I'm going to tell you is move that off to another system and see if you have the same problem, right? So it's more of a troubleshooting thing. But I also think that I would never discourage anyone from trying something, playing with it, even if it's not, production approved, certified use case, just to experiment. I think there's no harm in playing around and just as long as you're aware of what you're doing.
Yep. John, is there something that you need to tell us that we don't know about yet? John just put in the chat that there could be even be a new Mac
not yet. Not yet. I have been on tenterhooks waiting for Mac announcements to include something about a new studio
and
a new Mac Mini, but I haven't heard anything yet.
WWDC was not going to do, wasn't going to do computer picks due to the nature of what was coming out with Apple Intelligence. So it'd be really stupid to also put in the M4 Studio. I'm telling you how our brain works at the farm. Like we smart enough not to like announce this and announce this right on top of each other. Back to school is coming. So those announcements will probably drop in August and they'll be whatever kids need for school. So we're talking iMacs and lower ends. And then I'm assuming we're going to get studios and minis with the fall announcement with the iPhone or a week after the iPhone or something of that nature. But I am waiting for that M4 Studio. You have no idea. I don't like to keep my Macs older than 2 years, and this guy is 2 years and 4 days, and I'm mad because normally I would swap it for whatever the most current is, but I know that M4 Studio is sitting there.
I'm waiting for M4 too, but I gotta tell you, I'm running. This is an M1 Studio. I've never had. I mean,
yeah, mine doesn't. It doesn't have any issues whatsoever.
Hiccups.
I just don't keep them too long because what happens with. I was just telling my friend this yesterday. He was saying that he finally got to give up his 2017 notebook. I go, that's the curse. Is they work so long that you'll run it forever, and then you go touch somebody's stuff who's really quick, and you're like, oh, my computer's slow.
Yeah.
If you're in isolation, you're good. You'll never notice the slowdown for years on end.
Andy, I have a question for you. So the other day, it was announced that ZoomOSC is being deprecated on Windows. Mm-hmm. And Ecamm is a Mac-only application. Can you talk at all about how Zoom and Liminal think about serving the different platforms, and is one platform better suited for some of these tools? Like is Mac a better suited platform for tools like OSC and ISO than Windows is?
Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a reflection on the platform and what it can and can't do, but there's different motivations for what we do with Liminal versus what we do with Zoom versus what we allow third parties to do. So there are third-party developers who have integrations on both Mac and PC. So we have, Ecamm and Mimo Live are some prominent examples for this community on the Mac side. On the PC side, you've got vMix, you've got, Wirecast is cross-platform, so they have presence in both places. There's New Blue Captivate, which can run in both places as well. So there's definitely cross-platform support. Zoom products as well, cross-platform. So your workplace client. Also Zoom Rooms, right? And Zoom Rooms Pro AV, also cross-platform, right? So those NDI, SDI output capabilities coming, like similar to ZoomISO, coming on the Zoom Room product as well. Liminal is an innovation laboratory for Zoom. So the purpose of Liminal is to be able to experiment and put new ideas into the market as quickly as possible, allow customers to provide feedback on those ideas, and then roadmap the ability to bring in some of those technologies either into our SDKs and APIs or into our core products as well. And the most evident version of that journey is what we've done in Pro AV Zoom Rooms, where we've taken the technology from ZoomISO and put it into a cross-platform solution. So as an engineering manager, I have to make the choice, which is, do I go and build
sorry,
ZoomISO
Andy.
yeah.
Sorry, but also, I mean, Ecamm for Zoom is a prime example of that, right? Isn't Ecamm for Zoom not simply, there's nothing simple about it, but using what you created with ZoomISO
Yes.
and bringing that into,
That's a perfect example of that. Yeah, absolutely. So I have to make the decision then about, do I spend my engineering resources on providing cross-platform compatibility for products that we already have, or for empowering new integrations to come to market, because there is a fixed number of resources in the world, right? So, but that's not to say that there aren't solutions for Windows users and that we won't continue to invest in them. Because just before we put out the information on ZoomOSC for Windows, guess what? We launched a whole new initiative with Unreal Engine, which is primarily focused on the Windows platform. We announced the private beta for Pro AV Zoom Rooms, which is going to have a ton of adoption. I was just benchmarking Pro AV Zoom Rooms the other day on some high-end PCs. We have Universe Smart Solutions, which is an SDK developer completely in the control and automation framework. And I would love to invest energy in making sure that they have a high-quality product and solution versus just supporting cross-platform compatibility on a product that already exists. So if somebody really needs to solve a problem that ZoomOSC can solve for them, they can run it on a Mac, right? And that exists today. And if they need to do something more complex, they have access to the SDKs. They have access to third parties that do equivalent functionality to what ZoomOSC can do on Windows. And they have the opportunity to deploy new products that involve that as well. So I think that Windows users are very well supported by Zoom. I think that the purpose of Liminal is to be able to provide new tools and capabilities for those that will use them. And then my last point on this would be, if you like something, pay for it and use it, because we make prioritization decisions based on what people pay for and use. And I'd say a lot of the feedback on ZoomOSC for Windows come from people who aren't paying for it and don't use it. So
really,
I think that's, I think that's an interesting element to this as well. So,
because my first thought was, because I will not join a meeting without it. And God help me if you ever get rid. I mean, I don't know what I'll do anymore. I literally, it is just the lifeline of running any meeting that I do. And my first thought was, for some of those Windows folks, was going back to Tamra, was run to Costco, grab yourself an 8 gig Mac Mini, and just run it on there. Just join every meeting for that Mac Mini, and you're done. And you have it.
And just to be absolutely clear, it's not that we don't care about Windows or things like that. It's because ZoomOSC is part of ZoomISO, which is a much more popular product than ZoomOSC. And we have one code base for ZoomOSC and ZoomISO. They're just different versions of the same application on the Mac side. On the Windows side, it's a completely separate stack. And it was my app, so I think there's sometimes been a perception about whether this is like my choice or motivation, but ZoomOSC for Windows is the app that started Liminal. It's the app that I wrote in my basement in 2020. Wow. I hadn't touched a Mac until late 2020, early 2021 to start using that. So this was my baby, right? So wow. I wrote the Windows version of this app, and I definitely it's had a 4.5-year run. It's had a lot of different things that have happened with it, and I'm very proud of what it achieved in its time. But it's time to focus on things that more directly address the pain points, right? So you talk about the Stream Deck, right? Primary use case for ZoomOSC. Wouldn't it be better to invest in resources on how the Stream Deck interacts with Zoom, right? On platforms like that versus going through OSC, which is an intermediary protocol most people haven't heard about, right? Why don't we spend our resources on addressing the key pain points and things of that nature? So I think that at the end of the day, when you have to make decisions about where we're going to go next, we look at the usage. We look at who's paying, we look at the number of downloads, we look at all of those factors, and we make decisions for Liminal based on those factors. And that's what we're looking at here.
Wow. By the way, regarding Stream Deck and integrations, I meant to mention this earlier. There is no official Zoom Stream Deck plugin. There is one there that was created by some guy who was wonderful. He has since moved on, though. He's not supporting it anymore. luckily for me, at least for us, Ecamm, the guys did create their own plugin for Ecamm for Zoom. And it even fixed a number of the functionality in the old plugin that was broken. So if you are looking to not only control Ecamm, but control your Zoom meeting, I've got them all set up here. I can open any Zoom panel I want. I can cloud record, local record, raise hand, start meeting, leave meeting, all that other good stuff.
And on Windows, Universe has Stream Deck integration as well, doing a lot of the same things. So
Perfect.
I think that, again, it's about if your primary goal, right, the root cause of what you want to do is you want to be able to use a button controller to manage Zoom. There may be some better ways to do that at this stage in the game. In 2020, there was no other way to do it than ZoomOSC.
Really?
In 2020, the only way.
No,
I'm
saying really about today.
Yeah, today there are now multiple solutions for managing your Zoom meeting from a Stream Deck, cross-platform, and there will continue to be. And it's not just the Stream Deck; it's other types of hardware controllers as well. You look at Zoom Rooms and the ZRC. We have a whole SDK now just for building customized interfaces to control Zoom Rooms. Right, so there's so much more development that's taken place in the past 4 years that it's really about how to solve the root cause of the problem versus something different that where the usage just doesn't speak to that. So that's a general dissertation on how these kind of decisions get made, but it's I think there's plenty of things for Windows users to
and Zoom, and so Zoom Rooms and some of these other solutions, because Roland's asking about it and I am too, they'll give the feedback, like they'll show you who's in what place in the buttons and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. So Universe, again, is the example I keep coming back to because they're a dedicated control product. You plug in a Stream Deck to Universe, you drag the Zoom integration in, names populate on the keys, hand raise icons show up on the buttons, select them, route them, spotlight them, mute chat messages. It all exists in their product. So so it's not BitFocus Companion, which I think this group is probably most familiar with, but there are certainly integrations that exist on the Windows platform to do those kind of things.
Is that also Mac, or is that just Windows?
No, Universe is Windows only. Yep.
So are there other alternatives on the Mac that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think the Ecamm integration is a great example.
Right, but I don't get I don't have any of the control that OSC gives me with Ecamm.
But you could, right? And that's the opportunity on the Ecamm side is that they're using the same SDKs that we're using and theoretically could expand into that area. But I think there are other. I think hardware peripheral interaction with Zoom is a very interesting area. I think you should pay attention to that over the next year. I think there's things that can be done to improve that experience, and that's an area that I'd like to focus on versus backwards support for ZoomOSC.
Fascinating. Wow. I'm gonna have to learn something all new. God, I worked so hard on learning ZoomOSC.
Well, again, there's no plans to change anything for ZoomOSC.
No. I know.
It's because it's built into ZoomISO. So it's ZoomISO is a very popular product. We have every intention to continue to support that, which means ZoomOSC for Mac can come along for the ride.
It's even more interesting that ISO is the popular product, given that so many of these other tools are now building it in natively.
Well, it's funny. I would have assumed the same thing, that we would have seen less adoption of ZoomISO given the presence of all of these other integrations that we focus so hard on supporting, and we've seen the exact opposite. What that says at the end of the day is that the market is so large that it has room for everybody. And the people who need to use ZoomISO and the workflows that ZoomISO supports exist, and the people who, for whom Ecamm or vMix or whoever was a better solution for them also exist. And there's just so much room in this space that I don't really view it as competing with each other at this point.
I think when you have, and just something I just remember from my days in broadcast, our engineer really, really hated it when auto setting compressors and some of the other, let me listen to a sample and adjust the EQs for you stuff came out, because it just made his job, I don't have to call Jerry, right? Before, to do anything in the station, we had to call Jerry. But then we got tools that started to do some of that stuff for us. So the guys that still insist on doing it the ISO way is because they got a job. Everyone else is afraid of that. So as long as they don't teach everybody that they can do this themselves with something like Ecamm, then Jerry's good. So it's better to just leave them be. Well, there's also the extra tweaks if you want to do those last minute tweaks or those things that very much match your use case. That's actually probably the more reason. I just like
or infrastructure. That's the other thing.
Yeah, infrastructure.
Like, all right, you built a building.
Mixing the old stuff with the new. Oh my God, that's always a challenge, right? When you have like all of this new stuff going on, you got to work it into the old. So you definitely need those tools. So it is a fantastic tool that it will provide a little bit more flexibility than the press and go sort of situation. So there's that.
What you said, Doc, earlier about how this is the worst it's going to get.
Yep.
You know, everything that we can't even begin to imagine the amount of possibility there is in this Zoom SDK that Zoom has given access to developers for, and what they're able to do. I mean, just in this past hour and a half, the active speaker element of the SDK, the fact that all the OSC stuff is right there in the SDK. I mean, it really is what we're able to do is limitless, and it's gonna, Ecamm and the other tools will have to decide, is this something that our folks need? I'll be honest with you, I don't think that OSC functionality, at least the way I use it, is something that most Ecamm folks are screaming for. But each platform will decide what's going to be most valuable.
That's the most important point, David, of this entire strategy, by the way, is that a lot of people, I've seen this kind of question of like, what's the best Zoom integration? And I'm like, well, the funny thing about an integration is that it's two parties coming together, right? They're each bringing something.
Yep.
And for all of the broadcast developers, right, they've brought what makes their software special to the Zoom platform as another entry point. So we've seen, you look at Isadora, which is a media server, right? And it's primarily, I've used it for projection design and things like that. And it has a completely different workflow than Ecamm or vMix or any of these providers. So the beauty of all of this is that you can use whatever surface interface app you're already used to using, that you already know and understand. But at the end of the day, it's powered by the same reliable platform that provides, the connection that makes this possible. So that's a really important point. And again, the range extends so far. I mean, there's over 2,500 Zoom integrations, right? And we're talking about maybe 12 of them,
right,
in the broadcast space. And there are people who are doing automations with CRMs, and there's, and then we talked about Universe, right, which is primarily a control system for managing, make sure that the windows open up when I walk into the room and hit the button to turn on the lights, and now it can dial me into a Zoom meeting as well, right? And there's just so many different ways that these technologies surface, but the through line through all of this has been the Zoom Meeting SDK.
So yes, you lost my camera feed. That was not Zoom. That was not Ecamm. That was me. That was actually Stream Deck, because my mute button is right underneath my stop video button, and my big fat fingers accidentally pressed both. And because I have in Zoom, I have unchecked show me as active speaker because I don't want to look at myself. I didn't even know that I wasn't there. So there you go. Tamara, in response to you, I use Companion for OSC.
Cool, thank you.
Incidentally, I'm going to be Denise from Zoom Events Pros. What is her thing called, Ray? Zoom Event Pros, I think, right? Denise Lahat. And we can't hear you.
Denise Lahat.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike, for putting Universe in there. She's been running a Zoom event for this whole month with lots of people just kind of popping in and teaching. I'm going to be teaching a little thing about how I use ZoomOSC on Tuesday, I think. So if anyone's interested, you can definitely reach out to me on that. Good night, Hasbuk. So good to see you here. Okay, I have two other things. One is silly, but I'm kind of excited about it. Keyboard shortcuts for in-meeting reactions is coming.
Yes.
I'm really excited about this. You can get now, are those animated reactions? Do you know?
I haven't actually looked at the full set, what the limit is. But the idea is that, you can use a keyboard shortcut to trigger a reaction. I don't know whether it'll be the animated reactions or the corner pinned ones, but hooray.
So yeah, hooray is right. I agree. here. This is from the release notes. So for Mac, Shift Command Y will open your reactions panel. The clapping hands, the thumbs up, the love, haha, wow, celebrate. The celebrate, I think that's a moving one. So, in any case, that's fun. But I do have another question, and Ray, this is the question that was asked of us. What is it about spatial sound, spatial audio?
Yeah.
Is that part of the Zoom Pro AV? Sorry, not the Zoom Rooms Pro AV?
Nope, it's built into Windows. I was quite surprised, and Jason was the one that had sent you and I both that email. And we've both got it turned on. It's actually cool that if you just go check the little box in your audio settings for spatial sound, whenever you're looking at a gallery, when someone on the left side speaks, it comes out of your left side of your headset. When someone on the right side speaks, it kind of comes out of the right side of your headset. And when someone in the middle speaks, so if you've looked away from your screen for a minute and someone talks, you can go up there and immediately find them. Okay, it's not quite that easy, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
This is just on Windows, you said?
Oh, I've got it on the Mac side.
Windows,
You have it on the Mac side?
Mac OS, and Linux. Only desktops, all desktops.
And what is it called?
Yeah,
Spatial audio.
Spatial audio, because it's not in the
David,
It's a check-
one.
in your audio settings.
Yeah, no, it's not in the Ecamm one. So I'm opening up Vanilla Zoom.
Yeah.
To see if we have
And
it.
Just below where you pick your speaker, there's a couple of check boxes.
to your question though, David, as well,
Look at
this
that.
feature
Yep.
is already available on Zoom Rooms as well. So
It
if
is.
so that's actually where it started. Because that's a more common case where the screen is so large and the speakers are so separate from each
Right.
other that it has made sense to start there, but now it's coming to the desktop client.
That makes sense.
And the other
Jason,
thing I think in the release notes is it says that it won't activate until you leave this meeting and go to the next meeting. So if you've just turned it on, it won't.
yeah, well, I'm not in this meeting with the client, so Ecamm Tamara is not in Companion. Actually, so it looks like in Companion someone started to build something for Ecamm, but it's not there. It's there are now two profiles in. You don't even have to go to the Stream Deck store. When you install Ecamm, you'll automatically be prompted to add them to your Stream Deck, I believe. One is called Ecamm, and the other one is Ecamm for Zoom. The Ecamm for Zoom is just the Zoom controls, and the Ecamm one is all the Ecamm stuff. And both of them are really, really nicely full-featured.
So you have multiple Stream Decks, I know. So you put one Stream Deck into your Ecamm machine and just use regular Stream Deck, and then your
Yeah, exactly.
OSC machine. You and I have
Exactly,
similar
right.
setups, so I was just checking how I would do.
No, exactly. So I've got, except it's kind of the opposite. So I've got one Stream Deck is plugged into my OSC machine, and that the only thing it does is ZoomOSC. I really don't use. I'm a big fan of everything having its place, and so I know that I could use these for lots of other things, but I just don't. So OSC and Companion are one Stream Deck, and then all the other Stream Decks are connected to the other computer, and that's where I control Ecamm and things like that. And so,
Cool. Yeah, I've got the same. So I've got ATEM on one Ecamm on another. So
Roland is saying, I don't know. I'm learning how to do the chat thing still. No, see, look at that. When I change showing current scene, when I change the font here, the font size, it changes it everywhere, but I don't want it to change everywhere. Here, I want it to be. No, come back.
It's scene related.
It's scene. Yeah, but see, so here's in this scene. This is it. Okay, but now I'm going to go back to this scene, and when I bring the last cut, see, it's.
Yeah, because it's scene related.
What do you mean it's scene related?
Here, I'll show you.
But this is a different scene.
Yeah. So here, I'll go to this. If I make a camera text overlay placeholder situation like that, that stays here. Okay. And then I'll go to a new scene down here. never mind my theme crowd, and I add another overlay comment placeholder. I'll put it up here and then over there and smashy and do like this, and then I will actually pick a whole different font, just something completely random.
By the way, while you're doing that, it's your fault. I say embiggen all the time now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you see how this is, well, let me come out of there for a second.
Yeah.
So you see how that is like that, but if I go back to my original scene and I put this comment on,
Yes.
oh, the font switched.
The font, see?
Yeah, I use one brand font because you're supposed to style your stuff. But anyway,
Right, but it's
I
the
guess I never
size that I'm trying to do. I want the size to be different.
Yeah.
Right, so on this scene, when I've got it down here, I want it to be 18 point. But when I go to this scene, I want it to be 36 point. And they are both of those are show in current scene. So interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, they messed up something. It was working because I use only my font. I don't dip in between other people's brands. So
yeah,
it kind of just messed up my whole thing. But that's okay.
Sorry.
No, because I show you something. My trick that I'll teach you real quick. I have a thing down here called mechanicals. So here's how everything's supposed to look. So all I need to do is right click on this one and say copy, and then go back to the one that I changed that I didn't want to change. Come back up here, right click, and then say paste the settings, and then say paste the text style, and then it's back how I wanted it. And then I just gotta adjust the size. So you can either do it that way, or I just keep copies of everything the way I normally like it. So I can use this as my thing and just say copy and paste the settings, and then it's good to go. So you should make a scene called Mechanicals that has all of this stuff. These are all my colorways, all of my fonts. I know which items are plugged into where. I know which machines and at what levels and the whole 9 yards. And no one sees that but me, but it's there. And I keep my checklist as the first scene, so I don't go into meetings looking trash.
Don't press live until wow, that's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And just make yourself a scene with all your own instructions, because you'll forget when you become of a certain vintage. Yeah. Right, Frank?
Hey, Andy, I'm kicking you off.
Okay.
Go be with your family.
All right, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to bounce too. I got to go do this Ecam Espanol thing. It's hard. My brain is translating 2 meetings at one time.
Do you speak Spanish? I know you speak Japanese. Do you speak Spanish also?
I speak Spanish, Japanese, Korean, and swear words. Mostly swear words.
I love it. Guys, I'm so grateful for your time.
I was born in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, so I didn't learn to speak English till I was like 6 or 7.
Love it.
Amazing.
Great
to see everybody.
Aloha, gang. Yeah. Everybody have fun.
All right, have a lovely weekend, guys. Thanks so much. So if you are still watching, that was fun. I got my Ecamm fill. For those of you who are still watching, that just a reminder: if you want that, if you want to grab that discount, the code is Zoom Test Kitchen. You're welcome to grab that. Let me add to broadcast. Yeah, see, it's not working the way I want it to. Okay, in any case. Oh, look at that. My tiles crapped out on me again. Oh, well.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, hate it. Multiple David Paskins. Wait a second. What?
So Doc talked about, I know 7 David Paskins. And so if you just type David Paskin into the search bar on LinkedIn, you get like 10 or 12 of them.
Really?
One of them is you.
Are David Paskins the best?
Yes,
famous.
absolutely. He comes to the top of my list.
What's funny is that
Except
I'm never
no
on
alternative.
LinkedIn. The vice dean at Jefferson Medical College? No, I would take that. President at the Paskin Group. Wait a second. His name is David Bior. You can't be president of the Paskin Group if your last name isn't even Paskin. That's not right.
Imposter.
Oh my God.
Paskin Robbins.
What do you say?
Do you own Baskin Robbins?
At Baskin Robbins. Best mint chocolate chip ice cream of all the mint chocolate chips is Baskin Robbins, without a doubt. There
And
are,
at
by the way,
Christmas, they always play Paskin the Parcel.
Paskin the Parcel? I'm a rabbi. What do I know from Christmas? You completely stumped me there. I have no idea. Roland, thank you so much for hanging out. Really great having you here. By the way, there is a bunch of stuff. This is a pretty beefy release that's coming up on Monday. We're not gonna have time to go through it now, but we could play with it next week. But we've got the shortcuts for immune reactions, a lot of changes to, I don't know about changes, but to multi-share, about the newest share, because now it's this tabbed system up at the top. So that there's a few different changes coming to that. The don't show again meeting disclaimer prompt. It looks like they're merging visual effects and background controls. There's some stuff for webinar coming, for chat. There's a lot in here, which is great. The tabs throws off the attendees. You have to over communicate. Yeah, what do you think about the tabs, Jason? So what we're talking about is, oh, I just got some slapback. Let me see if I can, I'm not sure if I can show this. I'm just gonna.
That might be at Jason's end.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure how to show this without, I'll share my computer audio even though I'm not sharing audio. So now if I come down here and I go like this, oops. Does this work? Can you see anything or no?
Yeah.
See your desktop.
You can see my desktop. No, that's not what I want you to see. Hold on a second. Sorry.
Are you still getting
There we go.
back, Dave?
No, not now. Yeah, a little bit. I'm getting a little bit, yeah.
How about now?
How about now? Nope, not now.
Original sound for musicians. So when I have that turned on, there's just enough coming out of the earphone back into the microphone.
Gotcha. So here, this is what I want to show everyone. So the new look, and I know it's a little difficult to see. I apologize. I have so much stuff on my desktop. But so here's the meeting. And then when you're sharing, all the shares show up here as a tab. Now, interestingly, they changed this because before what was happening when you would share computer audio, no visual, just audio, it would default to this when the share went live. They've now changed that so that if it's just audio, you stay in the meeting view. But if multiple people are sharing, you will get all of these tabs up at the top. And so, Jason, what was your sort of take on?
So my experience was I was getting chat messages from my attendees. You're not sharing your PowerPoint anymore. I can't see your PowerPoint. Where'd your PowerPoint go? And the reality was that they had clicked on another tab that was just showing the webcam that I had spotlit. So I was running in side-by-side mode, and they clicked on the tab that was just showing the webcam feed, and I had to instruct them on this other tab. You'll see the whole show. So now the beginning spiel of every show includes, hey, the interface has changed. There's some tabs. On this tab, you'll see this. On this tab, you'll see that, and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking about doing a little Zoom clip or something like that I'll just add to my little electronic tips and tricks before we get started that I send out to all the attendees.
Has anyone else had troubles with that?
No, but that sounds awful. It's hard enough to get people to find their screen when they've covered it up with another window. To now have tabs to people who, like, the thing is, we know Zoom and we love Zoom, and I still stumble in Zoom. The average user does not know Zoom.
And they don't want to know Zoom.
But they think that they do. So whenever they tell you, hey, I want to tech check you, you're like, but I do Zoom every single day. And they don't know if they're on a tab or if they're in the web version or if they have the client, like they don't know any of that. So I feel for you, and I think I'm going to probably have the same problem you do, Jason.
It happens quite frequently, and you'll know it because you find yourself copying and pasting the same instructions in the chat window constantly. And now in my boilerplate email, I'm thinking about how to change that. Currently, what's in there is you've been invited to a Zoom meeting 2 weeks from today regarding topic X, Y, and Z. If you haven't updated if you haven't updated Zoom in the last 2 weeks, click here to join a test meeting. And then what I do on my side is I deprecate last supported meeting so that I'm not going way back into the archives. Currently, I'm at 4 back, so that's still... I'm no longer version 5 because now we're in 6.0.10. So now everybody's in at least 6. And that helps because if I get somebody that isn't in the last 4, when they go to join the test meeting, they'll be forced to upgrade. And if they come and they ignore the test meeting and they ignore my email and they come to the live meeting, they'll be forced to upgrade, which means, yes, they join late, but it's not a problem with my panelists because I force a rehearsal. So
that's super smart. Thank you for that.
Roland is asking, are you talking about webinar or meeting?
In meeting, that process is for meeting. There's not a test webinar to join. The test link is for a meeting.
No, I think he maybe have been asking about the screen sharing confusion.
Oh, tabs in meeting.
The tab, yeah. That's just in meeting?
I haven't fully tested in webinar, so stay tuned. But yeah, my problems that I just reported out are meeting.
Interesting. John, do you want to jump in, please?
I gave up sharing screens a long time ago. I now just use my speaker view and I drop all my content around me.
Which is great when you have a presenter that's willing to fork over their content. I get some people that are like, no, I'll just share it from my end.
With a lot of groups, I got to the point where I said, no, you do it my way. If you show them what you can do with a little bit of tech, then a lot of times they'll back down. And what I usually tend to do is I have a laptop dedicated to doing all the sharing, and I can give them remote control from that. So if they can control the screen, but I then got a computer in my office, which I can then pull through and lay out on the screen as I want, and I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, lots of people who got a second screen tick the box for second screen on Zoom. And then of course, what happens is they click on one screen and your shared screen is now behind it and they can't see it. Yeah, it happens all the time.
That's a good point.
So yeah, I've stopped sharing, screen sharing as much as possible.
And then just force everything through on the webcam feed.
Yeah.
Which is, that's what OBS and Ecamm and all those things allow you to do, right?
Exactly, David. Exactly.
Right. I can do this
even a cheap
instead of
version of
screen
OBS will allow you to do that.
Right. There used to be limitations though, like the webcam feed. I mean, now it's at least 720, but before you didn't have that option. And so if you had mouse print on a PowerPoint, share a screen was really your only option in order for that text to display correctly in a meeting.
Yep. I will say that I had to join a Microsoft Teams meeting earlier this week.
I'm sorry.
Can I tell you? And I'm not saying this to badmouth. It literally, because I timed it, took me 12 minutes to join this meeting. I clicked on the link. I had to log into something. Then I had to authenticate my login, and then I did I couldn't just join as a guest, which is it was.
You can, but there's so many tick boxes that the host has to do on their side. So by default, their philosophy is to keep everything inside the firewall. And there's one thing that they do really great. Like you can have, I don't know if it's a G1 license, but at least the G3 license. So if you are government level 3, which is the second to lowest one, in Teams, you can broadcast to 10,000 people. Like, no problem. Right out of the box. You don't have to request anything. Like, just boom. 1 or 10,000, it's fine. But it tends to be inside the firewall. If you invite outside guests, it gets very difficult.
Yeah. It just wasn't. And interesting, by the way, one of the things that's come out in this update, synchronized presence from Zoom to Microsoft. When configured and enabled by their account owner or admins, users can seamlessly synchronize their presence from Zoom to Microsoft, maintaining a consistent representation across both platforms. So, I don't know. Interesting. But it really wasn't, it was really frustrating. And I got onto the call and I said to the guy, I said, I don't do this for a living, but I do a lot of this stuff. And I can't believe it just took me 12 minutes to get on this call. I just can't believe it. In any case.
And a lot of those administrators don't really know how to tweak it, because my experience has been the permissions are buried as part of SharePoint, which is a whole nother animal.
Mm. I'm not getting the beepy beep when someone raises their hand.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me, I know you're up there, Ray, but I want to, maybe that's not in
Put
here.
your hand up, Ray.
No, his hand
Beep,
was
beep,
up.
beep. There you go.
Oh, thanks. That's perfect.
I fell for that.
Frank always to the rescue.
I'll just do that from now on for you.
If you could, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Is that a function in Zoom that not co-host? You just have to promote Frank to beep beep.
Beeper roll.
Yeah.
So on the heels of your unusual experience with Microsoft Teams, I have to relay a little shocker experience I had yesterday. I had a little problem with my AC. I'm out here just outside of Phoenix, and it's already gotten over 110 several days in a row and pretty warm. And my upstairs AC unit would work fine in the night and all of the morning, but in the afternoon, it just quit working. And two guys came out, and one guy went, oh, it's probably this little bypass thing, and he's busy working on it. And I'm just standing out there in the heat, kind of chatting with him, and most of the time I'm indoors because I do Zoom. I run Zoom meetings and that sort of stuff. And the guy who was standing next to me turned to me and said, "What's Zoom?" I was like, I almost wanted to take a selfie with him. It was like, I just met a guy that doesn't even know what Zoom is. And I got to thinking about that late last night is, how many people do you know that actually have never, ever, ever even heard of Zoom? I mean, they not only haven't used it, they haven't used it professionally, they don't use it, but they haven't even heard of Zoom. And to me, that was just like, it almost blew my mind out there in the heat. If it had been a little warmer, it probably would have.
Yeah. We're in a bit of a bubble. It's a big bubble. It's a big one, but we are.
Well, I mean, there was a point where, you talked about smartphones and only a few people had them, and then almost everybody had one. And now there's a lot of people that don't have them because they've heard of them and they don't want one. But most everyone knows that, Star Trek and being able to tap on a little communicator and talk to someone far, far away very easily is reality now, not fiction.
Yep. Yep. What else, folks? Anything else? Oh. Are we calling it?
I have an eCam question.
Okay.
So I quickly popped onto the eCam website during the meeting, and I see there's some kind of eCam community. What's that like? What's that about?
So interestingly, it's actually the best part of eCam. It really is. So it's just all of us users. That's what it is. And there are a couple Facebook groups. There's a beta group. There's a regular group. There's a couple of there's a Discord where we all hang out. I run a subset of that group called eCam for Educators, where we have a monthly meeting. about how to use these tools.
Can you post that in our Discord so I can get to it?
Yeah,
Not right now, but
yeah, absolutely. It's a couple of the guys who Doc responds all the time. Andy, who was on before, responds all the time. I try and respond all the time. But if I can't speak for the other platforms, but if people post a question in Facebook, in less than an hour, they will have multiple responses from people who actually know, or Discord, who actually know what they're talking about. And that's on top of the support and, the official support, but that's what that is. And they have ENN, the Ecamm News Network, which is a stream that goes live every Monday night. And then Doc does a 2-hour onboarding live stream every single Friday for people. So it's all of this stuff.
Well, if you don't mind, post some of those links in our new Ecamm Discord.
Yeah.
What's a sub Discord called? Is it called there's Discord and then there's the topics. What are they?
Channel. I think it's a
channel. Okay.
Channel.
Post that in our Ecamm channel. All the stuff you just said, I'd be interested in seeing.
Sure. Absolutely. I definitely will. And by the way, thank you, Mike, for the vMix channel and for adding those links. That's fantastic.
Of course.
That's
Yeah,
good.
there's also in the Facebook world or the vMix world, there's also Facebook groups as well. And if you guys are interested, I will throw those in Discord as well.
Yes,
I wish Facebook would hurry up and die. I hate Facebook.
I can't stand. And live streaming to Facebook is getting more and more difficult every day. Every
Yes.
time you want to use Facebook as a destination, it gets more and more difficult.
Back to Ray's question on how many people don't know Zoom exists, I think you could probably get a very good sample size for your survey if they're a heavy Facebook user and if they have an @AOL.com email address.
I still deal with people who have AOL addresses.
And the amount of communication that you have to do to them to make them tech proficient enough to participate in the meeting, is that?
Yeah, the minute I see an AOL address, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, it's not just me.
Is Hotmail in the same category as AOL?
Not as bad. would be
It's
my-
not as bad.
Yahoo.
Yahoo would be, yes.
Yeah.
AOL's the winner.
Yeah.
Especially if it's first name, last name at AOL, then, that kind of tells you something. Like they joined before they had to use numbers.
They probably have a walker.
All right, folks. I think I'm going to call it for today. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you next week on The Kitchen. Thank you so much, guys.
Play the outro music.
Oh, outro music. I need outro music. Where's my outro music?
That sounds a lot like the intro music.
You know what? Beggars can't be choosers, okay? See you later, guys. Bye.